Only 2% of grassland occurs in formal state protected areas in this country, and we're losing our grasslands at around about 6% a year. So it's very important that we secure whatever we have left of our grasslands. Grasslands act as sponges together with wetlands, and they basically have a slow release of water into our catchments, which then feed our dams, and we all depend on that water. Our focus is on working with private and communal landowners to secure what remains of our important biodiversity outside of formal state protected areas. So we do this mainly through what we call the biodiversity stewardship mechanism, which is a completely voluntary mechanism whereby landowners set aside portions of their land as a conservation land use. There are different categories of stewardship. They start at the bottom at what we call a biodiversity agreement, and that is basically a contract between the landowner and the provincial conservation authority. The next stage up is protected environment. An entire property can be declared a protected environment, but it doesn't have the same restrictions on it as a nature reserve does. Then we have the nature reserves category right at the top. So in Tillietudlem's case, we helped them get declared as a nature reserve. We took them through the whole process, from the site assessment through developing a management plan, declaration and protected area management authority agreements with the landowners. Very importantly, this is all done with the landowners and the managers. Some of our stewardship work is in fact funded by the landowners themselves who want to get the area declared, and they cover our costs in doing that. And in Tillietudlem's case, with the partnership with Birdlife South Africa, Conservation Outcomes funds half of the cost, and then Birdlife cover the other half.
Originally, this 2,000 hectares that makes up the farm was used for agricultural purposes. The current owner, Chris Wilkinson, has had the farm for about 25 years, so we're celebrating our quarter of a century in conservation.
Often nature reserves or protected areas are declared and there's little support to them after that. In my mind, the work pretty much starts after declaration in supporting those areas. And we're doing quite a lot of that with Tillietudlem.
About 70% of our work that happens on the farm is removing alien plants, which obviously doesn't generate any profit. In winter, we'll focus predominantly on black wattle. It's a very invasive species, especially in the river courses. Within the reserve, there's about 14 kilometers of stream. These streams are the headwaters of the Elands River, which ultimately flows into the Nkumas River. Unfortunately, the black wattle trees, when they colonize these streams, they cause blockage. So it has a detrimental effect on the flow of the river and also the ecology of the river.
So previously this area was completely overgrown with wattle, which means that there was absolutely no sunlight that reached the water. And that pretty much prevented the whole ecosystem, the aquatic ecosystem, from functioning properly. As we cut back the wattle and we allow more sunlight to come in, we're starting to see more insect life. If you pick up these stones, I don't want to disturb them now, but if you pick up these stones, you'll start seeing small little insects like stoneflies, mayflies, and little caddis larvae that live on the underside of the rock. So getting rid of the wattle is not just good for the water flow, but it's also good for the water ecology.
We'll go in there with chainsaws and then cut out the black wattle. We'll remove the timber and burn the brush. After we burnt the brush, we brought in kikuyu. And you can see how the kikuyu has pretty much covered this whole area. Whereas if you pan out and look at that direction, you'll see there's way more wattle coming up there. So the kikuyu really does a good job in just capping off the area. But that just happens in the first year. There's also several years after that where we have to go back to the same area and do rehabilitation work, just follow-up work.
In summary, I think it just shortens down your rehabilitation time. Where it would normally take you 7 years to rehabilitate the area, it now takes you maybe 2-3 years. Just in contrast, we didn't manage to get to this area to cap it off with kikuyu runners, but it's a good example of the amount of regrowth that one will get if one does not use kikuyu to cap the swell.
Of these 14 kilometers of stream that we have on the reserve, we've already cleared 10 kilometers and we're left with another 4 kilometers of primary cut. It is very expensive to do this alien plant clearing in the river. To give you an idea, to clear a 1 kilometer stretch of river, the labor will roughly cost you about 200,000 rand. The herbicide will cost you another 40,000 rand. Then you still need to maintain all your equipment, the chainsaws, the fuel for the chainsaws. So it's easily another 30,000 Rand. So roughly speaking, a kilometre could cost you as much as 300,000 Rand to clear, and you could do that probably over a period of about 3 to 4 months. So we are quite heavily reliant on funding, mostly from government, but also sometimes from private sector to assist us with this. We then employ people from the local community, which is right next to the farm. Sometimes employ up to 20 people at a time for maybe a 3 or 4 month period, which is obviously vital employment that's generated for the local community. And these things also mitigate other problems that we have, for example, like poaching. The community now starts seeing us as a benefit and a place where they can gain employment, and that in itself kind of like regulates the poaching. The other species that we focus on is American bramble. That's very invasive, especially in the grasslands, and we tackle that mostly in summertime when it's the growth season of the plant. We spray approximately 150 hectares of bramble every single year by hand. That is an ongoing fight. We have made a substantial dent. We might win in a specific area, but there will be new infestations in other areas. Unfortunately, with the recent COVID-19 outbreak, some of the funding has dried up. We had 3 big projects lined up, but as a result of the pandemic, that funding is probably redirected to other areas now. So we're in a bit of a bind, but we continue as best we can. At the moment, we are not tackling any new areas. We're just focusing on the areas where we have done primary cutting to ensure that there's no regrowth and that we maintain those specific areas. Tillietudlem Nature Reserve, we basically generate our revenue through 4 different streams. The one is through ecotourism. We've got 2 guest houses on the property. The one is a 4-star graded guest house with 10 rooms, and then the other one is not as luxurious, and that is more self-catering. We do offer some other activities as well. For example, fly fishing. We've got 4 well-stocked trout dams on the property. There's excellent birding on the reserve. We do a lot of hiking as well. A lot of people come through here to do mountain biking. And then a lot of people use us as a base to go into the Midlands meander as well. We're half an hour from most of the attractions. We also do hunting in winter, not only to generate revenue, but obviously to manage the populations of wildlife on the reserve. We also sell hay off the farm. There are certain areas of the farm where we do baling, not just to get the hay, but also as a type of a veld management tool. And then the last revenue stream for the farm is the Nguni cattle.
We got these Ngunis about 12 years ago. It's a registered stud of Nguni. Initially, the idea behind getting Ngunis was not to make money, but rather as a management tool for the reserve. And they basically fulfill the function that historically would have been done by large herds of free-roaming game, which obviously due to fences we don't have anymore. These 300 Nguni basically move throughout the game reserve, and they ensure that the grazing is in good condition by making sure that there's no moribund grass.
Ultimately, Chris's long-term vision for Tillietudlem is to get rid of all the alien plants, to return the veld into its natural condition, and then to protect the area and give it long-term protection. And that is one of the main driving forces why we have decided to declare ourselves a nature reserve, because even if the land changes ownership, the land use can never be changed. It will always have to be a nature reserve.